A brand new Battlefield game is coming soon. What you're seeing on your screen right now is Battlefield 2042 gameplay. If you guys remember that disaster, it very much divided the Battlefield community. Some people liked 128 player Battlefields with specialists, and some people just wanted to see it go back to classes only and 64 player stuff. But if you're a big fan of Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 and you've been waiting for something like that to come back, then I think that you're really going to be happy with this information. So let's get into it. This information is coming from an IGN article. It was an exclusive interview with Vince Zampella. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with him, quite some time ago, he was the studio head for Infinity Ward and helped the development of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the original, as well as Modern Warfare 2, and then he moved on to form Respawn Entertainment. They made Titanfall and Titanfall 2, as well as Apex Legends. And to me personally, that makes this article vastly more interesting because Vince Zampella, he's basically the GOAT. He's helped create so many incredible video games over his entire career, and if he's out here offering a helping hand to DICE, and if he's going to help shape the future of the next Battlefield game, then I would say that it should be looking pretty good. So in this article, it says, exclusive, Vince Zampella confirms next Battlefield will use modern setting, and they show the first concept art here. It says we get our first glimpse of EA's big Battlefield revival and learn about how it's getting back to basics. And yes, you can see the concept art right here. I don't know why, but just from this specific screenshot, it weirdly makes me think of Battlefield 5. I don't know if that's because of the Firestorm Battle Royale mode. Like, that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from the forest burning down over here. But it's clearly a modern setting. You can see some Apache helicopters over here. There's clearly some kind of boat. Obviously, we don't get a great look at soldiers or guns or anything like that. It's just very early concept art. And that's more than likely because DICE is not going to release a new Battlefield game until possibly 2025. But let's keep going. IGN can also confirm that Battlefield will be returning to a modern setting after stints in World War I, World War II, and the near future. While EA is cagey about specifics when it comes to the concept art, including declining to name the city where it sets, although it looks like Italy, France, or somewhere also in Europe, it does include details that should stand out to longtime fans of the series. Among other things, it appears to suggest that ship-to-ship and helicopter combat will be part of the new game, and that it will feature natural disasters like wildfires. Its grayish color scheme is evocative of Battlefield 4, which remains one of the most popular games in the series despite being released a decade ago. Okay guys, so this is where it starts to get juicy because they're saying that Battlefield is going back to basics. All of it points to a back to basics approach for the next Battlefield. Indeed, head of Respawn and Group GM for EA Studios organization Vince Zampella is quick to shout out Battlefield 3 and 4 in the course of sitting down with IGN to talk about these new reveals. On the decision to return to the modern era, Zampella says, I mean, if you look back to the peak or the pinnacle of Battlefield, it's that Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 era where everything was modern. And I think we have to get back to the core of what Battlefield is and do that amazingly well. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But I think for me, it's that peak of Battlefieldness in the Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 days. So I think it's nostalgic for players, for me, for the teams even. Those are the kind of heyday, although I would say Battlefield 1942 also. The return to the modern setting represents a course correction for the series after Battlefield 2042, which eventually found its footing but was otherwise widely panned for features like specialists, characters that made it seem as if Battlefield was trying to be a hero shooter. Its ambitious 128 player maps also proved unpopular with fans who preferred a more focused experience. Battlefield 2042 eventually went back to supporting 64 players per map, and the next Battlefield plans to stick to that approach. Yeah, the 128 player, did it make it more fun? Like, doing the number for the sake of the number doesn't make any sense. We're testing everything around what's the most fun. So like you said, the maps, once they get to a certain scale, become different. It's a different play space, and I think you have to design around that. So we're designing something that is more akin to previous Battlefields. I'd rather have a nice, dense, really nice, well-designed play spaces. Some of them are really good. I can't wait for you to see some of them. He also says that specialists are out this time around. He says, quote, so I wasn't there for Battlefield 2042. I don't know what the rationale was, but for me, it's like the team tried something new. You have to applaud that effort. Not everybody liked it, but you gotta try things. It didn't work. It didn't fit. Specialists will not be coming back. So classes are kind of at the core of Battlefield, and we're going back to that. He's careful to stress that Battlefield 2042 wasn't a, quote, failure of a game, despite not doing as well as hoped. He notes that the development team really spent a lot of time learning how to adapt it and getting things back. Still, he says EA doesn't want a repeat of the experience that they had with Battlefield 2042. We want it to be good out of the gate. So they are basically tiptoeing around the fact that they do see Battlefield 2042 as a failure. I think a lot of you guys watching this video would also admit that the game is essentially a failure. Yes, they did kind of get things back on track, but when you launch a brand new game and it's kind of in this fragile state where it's not really ready to go, it's kind of incomplete, it's missing features, features and it already has really polarizing things that the community was not completely vibing with, that's truly a recipe for disaster. I mean, I remember when they launched Battlefield 2042 back then, I think there was a quote from one of the devs saying that the reason why Battlefield 2042 did not do well is because of how polished Halo Infinite was. And look where Halo Infinite is, dude.
Both Halo and Battlefield were given a free pass to shut down Call of Duty Vanguard that year, and what did they do?
Anyway, we're gonna keep going. It adds up to what one might call classic Battlefield, but bigger. Big enough that it merits the efforts of 4 separate studios in DICE, Motive, Ripple Effect, and Criterion. Ridgeline Games was briefly part of its development before being shuttered, oh dear. EA CEO Andrew Wilson claims it's one of the, quote, most ambitious projects in EA's history. Yeah, this whole, like, most ambitious projects, it's kind of like how Call of Duty also says this is the most ambitious or most innovative Call of Duty game as well. That's to hype up the shareholders. They could have said that Call of Duty Vanguard was the most ambitious World War II Call of Duty game to date, right? It's those sweet, delicious words that get us to buy the games, right? Not the actual game or the gameplay, but anyway. Says, nevertheless, Zampella remains vague on what all of that actually entails. He says, yeah, it's definitely betting bigger on Battlefield. It's going in and expanding what Battlefield is. We have to have the core. The core Battlefield players know what they want. They've been with us forever. They've been amazing supporters. We need to earn their trust back and get them back on our side. And then it's expanding out and getting more players into the universe and seeing what we can do. So when you want a different experience, you don't have to leave Battlefield. You can experience more things within the Battlefield universe, so we're expanding the offerings that we're giving. Now, even though the article is saying that Zampella is being vague on what this actually means, it also kind of sounds pretty straightforward if you're someone who's been playing Battlefield for a very long time. The focus would most likely be shifted to 64-player maps and 64-player experiences. There would be a sharp focus on the class system in the game. So instead of having specialists, we would go back to assault, medic, support, and recon. And as far as it goes for Battlefield 4, at least, there would be some kind of emphasis on destruction in the game, whether that's Levolution, or it could be more like Bad Company 2, where almost every building in the game can be destroyed over time, aside from some core buildings and core positions on the maps, you know? Based off of this quote from Zampella, it definitely seems like they're on the right track. If they get Battlefield back to its core and they can make a brand new game that appeals to core Battlefield players, what they're saying is that from there, they can expand, they can try to do some different things. I think a prime example of how they could have done this better in Battlefield 2042 is if the maps and the experiences were designed for 64 players first, and then they could have had basically like some LTMs where they could shove 128 players on those maps, and then it would have been so chaotic. It would have been absolute madness. I feel like that's the kind of stuff that people would have wanted to see. Now, obviously, in a situation like that, balance could become a very bad issue, but that's kind of the whole point of making it an LTM. It wouldn't be part of the core experience. It would just be something that people could try out and play for fun. But let's keep reading. The road ahead for Battlefield. In the meantime, Activision Blizzard is planning to release Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Battlefield's traditional competitor. Where Battlefield has stumbled, Call of Duty has largely continued to thrive. It begs the question, will Battlefield ever outsell Call of Duty? Now, honestly, this is kind of an irrelevant topic. We will obviously read and go through this section, but I gotta be honest, like, outselling Call of Duty is something that's typically not achievable by a lot of different video games. It tends to only really happen when Rockstar is releasing a huge new video game, with one of the recent exceptions being last year with Modern Warfare 3. Hogwarts Legacy did outsell Modern Warfare 3 last year. But from Battlefield's standpoint, I don't feel like outselling Call of Duty is going to be some kind of crowning achievement, especially as we read on. Vince Zampella says, quote, if you look, the best Battlefields have outsold some Call of Duties and the other way around, back and forth. So I think absolutely it can. And then it says, note, while sales data is incomplete, the publicly available data for even weaker releases like Infinite Warfare has typically favored Call of Duty. And this is true. Battlefield 1 almost outsold Infinite Warfare that year, but it didn't. And again, based off of the data that we have, Call of Duty has actually outsold Battlefield every single time. Based off of the numbers that we have, it's just not even really close. Except for 2016. That particular year, Battlefield 1 was so close, but I think the fact that Infinite Warfare was bundled with Modern Warfare Remastered helped sell the game further. And ultimately, Call of Duty continued to outsell Battlefield again. But after providing that information, he says, I mean, is that what we're going for? I mean, not directly, but always. We're not looking to take down Call of Duty. We're making something that's different, and we're making something that's us. But yeah, it definitely has the possibility. And I think that's a better mindset. I really don't think that they should be trying to design and make Battlefield games specifically to try to dethrone or kill or take over Call of Duty. It just doesn't make sense. It's not only extremely unlikely to happen, but it also shouldn't be the driving force of why they make a Battlefield game the way that they would. But moving on, it says, on the subject of pushing into the transmedia space where franchises like The Last of Us and Fallout have thrived, Vince Zampella says, there are definitely opportunities there. We've had some discussions, but it's not our core business. To me, that stuff, when it works, it's super cool. But there's other ones that haven't worked as well, and I won't name those. The Halo show, what? It's a marketing opportunity of getting your franchise out there, and it's not core to what we're doing right now. So we are game first. That has to work, and if the right opportunity comes, absolutely, we'll look at it. And do we take meetings all the time? Sure, but it's not the core business. So it's that balance. I would love to see it, right now, we're not looking at anything like that for Battlefield. Yeah, so I would not expect a Battlefield TV show or movie anytime soon. And honestly, I really don't feel like that's necessarily possible anyway, because Battlefield has kind of struggled to have really iconic, core, recognizable, and memorable characters in their campaigns. I mean, dude, Battlefield 2042 is a prime example. The game did not launch with a campaign, which is unusual for a Battlefield game. It's very similar to what happened when Call of Duty Black Ops 4 launched. The game did not launch with a campaign, which was just extremely unusual for a Call of Duty game to do. And when they announced that Battlefield 2042 was not going to ship with the campaign, it had people worried. It gave them Black Ops 4 flashbacks. But going back to the article, it says it's unclear when the next Battlefield will release, but there are signs that EA is ramping up for 2025, having entered a full production earlier this year. According to Zampella, EA is, quote, playtesting the game every week and plans to launch a community program next year, though it's unclear if it's a closed beta or something else. Now, as far as it goes for the timeline of when this Battlefield game could release, it could be 2025, it could be 2026. We'll just have to keep an eye out for any news or updates regarding the next Battlefield game. And as far as it goes for the community program, that does sound very interesting. And I'm curious to see how you'd be able to enter and get into that program, because, dude, I'm ready to play a new Battlefield game. Not gonna lie, man, it was pretty painful getting back on 2042 and trying to get this gameplay for this video, dude. But to wrap up the article, he's saying, we have a program that we're going to announce next year around getting more community in, because that's kind of the core of what we do. Get the community back on our side, get that trust back, he says. So I think we are in a really good place. Is it challenging? Of course, but it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't. Whenever Battlefield eventually releases, it'll be a big test for the series, which has a lot to prove to fans after close to a decade since its last really successful entry. It'll be entering an unsettled console landscape, with Sony announcing the PS5 Pro last week, rumors of a next-gen Xbox, and Nintendo expected to announce the Switch 2 soon. Zampella is broadly taking a we'll see approach to both the PS5 Pro and the unannounced Switch 2, though he has some kind words for Nintendo in particular. He says, quote, I mean, since Switch 2 isn't announced and it doesn't exist, I can't really comment on that, but I would say absolutely. Nintendo, along with Microsoft and Sony, are great partners for us, and they are important to us on our business at EA, at Respawn, and would love to see it. We don't have anything to announce, but is there a world? Sure. We love them as partners. They've been great to us. I love the Switch. One way or another, EA is betting a huge amount of time, money, and manpower on the idea that the multiplayer shooter space is ready for a shakeup. As for whether that bet will pay off, it sounds like we'll know sooner rather than later. And that is going to do it for IGN's article and their interview with Vince Zampella talking about the next Battlefield game. It definitely sounds interesting, and it sounds pretty good so far, but I feel like a lot of players are going to be skeptical and hesitant after what happened with Battlefield 2042. What I will say is that it sounds like they are getting back on track. It sounds like they do know what Battlefield fans, what the Battlefield community wants in a new Battlefield game. I constantly see people saying that they want to see a remaster of Battlefield 3 or a remaster of Battlefield 4, and I feel like that's not really the direction they're going to be going in. It feels like they want to make a new Battlefield game. They want to give us a new experience, but they're taking inspiration from Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And obviously, coming from the perspective of someone who's played Call of Duty for a very long time, it more or less kind of sounds like they want to do almost a soft reboot of Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4, similar to what Call of Duty's done in recent years with the soft reboots of Modern Warfare and Black Ops. We're at that point where Call of Duty and Battlefield have been around for so long that there is a new generation, a new set of players that are going to be playing and experiencing these games potentially for the first time ever. And as time goes on and as these franchises get older and older, they have to find a way to still appeal to the core community while also trying to find ways to make the game new and interesting for new players. It's very, very difficult to do. It's a hard balance to strike, but it does seem like DICE is at least moving in the right direction for this next game. But that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching me cover the latest Battlefield news. Definitely let me know in the comments what you guys think about the next Battlefield game. And if you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see some more stuff like this, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later.
Outcome, Triangle.